What are we talking about? Because it's an extra special edition.
Yes, it is. So for people who are new to our channel, occasionally what Emma and I do is hop on to a story in our culture. So way back when we started, if you're looking at the first couple of 10 episodes, we're up to episode number 32 now. We did some stuff around Wimbledon. We've done some stuff around Parliament, elections, and it's things that pop into our everyday culture. And we look at it from a perspective of what can we draw from this in terms of bad work stories, work, resonance, how does it apply? So, of course, there's this huge story been happening over the last couple of weeks. And, of course, it's the Women's World Cup football being held in Emma's hometown.
New Zealand, yes. It's been in New Zealand and it's been in Australia. So very exciting to have it down under. Raising the profile of women's football, which is nothing like having it in your home turf to actually find out what it's all about.
Football, Emma, educate our listeners, is not like even the top 5 really in New Zealand.
No way, Jose. I mean, obviously we're world champions in rugby, women's rugby,
yep.
and men's rugby, but football's not really much. Doesn't have a high profile.
Yep, or a
netball. Netball's our game. Yeah. Netball's our game for the women, and unfortunately we lost in the World Cup. We crashed out this year too. Anyway, it's not about netball. It's about
soccer.
Football.
Or soccer, as it's called in the US or in Australia and in New Zealand. So the other part that's being shared between Australia and New Zealand, and it's the same situation in Australia, that football or soccer has a much lower profile. But all of that is changing because as of a couple of days ago, we now have Australia is playing England in the semi-finals tomorrow. So by the time you're listening to this, there will be a new holder of the World Cup because the defending champions
are
out, and that's another story. But why are we talking about football?
Yes, why are we talking about this Women's World Cup?
Well, apart from the fact that you've been listening for a while, you know that I particularly like to talk about sports and the lessons that we draw from that. It's kind of like there's so much good stuff happening around, the PR, and not only the PR, but, the feel-good factor and what we see on our screens around, the elevation of women's sport, particularly in this genre, what we're seeing in terms of, new countries' representation coming in. I mean, the rise of a country like Morocco, the first woman player playing in a hijab, the story of Colombia and, their fans and what they've been able to achieve. And then, of course, we have the falling out of the big guns, which is, all the tension and storylines that you love to make it exciting. But behind all that really good stuff, there is some dark shadow stories. Like these are the bad work stories that are going on, that on the show we wanted, we just want to highlight that it's not all rose-colored glasses stuff here, and there's some serious stuff going on that kind of gets forgotten a little bit when we're talking about. I mean, I couldn't believe it today, Emma. You would have woken up you've just woken up. So, but there's talk in Spain that if they win, to be a national holiday.
Wow.
And one of the commentators was talking about England, saying, would England want that if they won? And I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, right? They're talking about, would the Prime Minister give them a public holiday? And I'm thinking, well, the Prime Minister can't even do anything about equity of pay. Let's cut to the chase. It's the kind of stuff that we're working with here, and it's crap. Right.
Yep.
So, what we wanted to, I've highlighted.
I was going to say, tell me what is going on under the surface that under that glory. What is going on that really has you concerned?
And I think the other thing is, why are we talking about the stuff that's going on under the belly? For me, it pays to the resilience of these women's sports. Sports players, these sportswomen, that there's so much noise that they
Yes.
still manage to deliver the goods on the pitch.
Yeah.
And if anyone's, familiar with the work of Tim Galway, which wrote The Inner Game of Tennis, he was back in the 70s, he talked about, performance equals potential minus take away all the interferences or the distractions. And typically that was what was going on in our heads. But in this case around the World Cup, we have so much external going on as well. Right.
Yeah.
So it's just really a heads up and a celebration of, the crap that these women through loads of countries are putting up
Yeah.
with, and they still manage to do it on the pitch and still deliver that high performance. So a celebratory heads off to all these amazing players and coaching staff that are supporting them, and of course all the extended family. So so that's kind of the opening piece. So,
And
is anything? Do you pick up anything from there, Emma, to add?
no, I just say that I think that you're right. I mean, we don't realise when at this level the commitment and the fact that they are away from families often, and the dedication. I mean, they're putting on a truly fantastic spectacle, and they're performing high levels. So all kudos to these women for the work, and they've done it. And I know you're going to come to this with much lower pay and conditions than their counterparts. And
totally. Well, let's kick off with that because this is a staggering stat, right? FIFA gives the men four times what they are giving out to the women. So I think the stats are something like 400 million versus 110. It's kind of like that. 400 million to 100 million is what the World Cup, FIFA, who's the governing body of World Cup, will make available to the players four times, right? And of course, there's all this dialogue. I've even heard it in, family members talking about stuff. That of course, the men's game is so much bigger. Well, isn't that interesting around what happened around Euros and what's happening now? And even from a principle perspective, like in terms of, we have, Champions League winners, the best players in the world can't afford their mortgages. Well, not all of them. There's kind of a huge continuum of pay. Like, before anyone goes, oh, but this player's getting this and this player's getting it. Yes, they are, but they're few and far between. And the majority of football players are on what we would consider to be a minimum wage. Yeah. And and that's, and as you just said, with the entertainment, the kind of, what these women are giving us and the commitment and training and sacrifices.
Totally. And for FIFA, the fact that they're raising the profile of the sport. And so it's like, even when you think about, the fact of what the work they're doing for football in the world, and for them to just, not be recognized financially, that's appalling. It really is.
Yeah, there's some talk around like FIFA were really late, getting the broadcasting deals done for this cup. And of course, that's revenue. Right. So, there's it's kind of, what was missing for me was that, would it kill FIFA to come out and go, we are 100% behind, pay equity for our women's teams. And this is how we're going to really make a statement and bridge gaps. No. No.
I mean, I think we could do a whole series on FIFA.
Exactly. That's kind of main FIFA. And the other thing around FIFA was that how they're going to distribute that pay, right? So originally the talk was that every individual woman player would get a package, right, which I think was around $30,000. And then the talk changed to it going to each country's federation. And of course, for some women, particularly in some particular countries like South America, are really concerned about will they actually get the money? Right? And this is life changing for women, right? So these, these players. So So that again is a level of complication and confusion. And, I mean, even the stories of, I think of the team from Haiti needed to crowdfund, and I might have the wrong team there, but there was a crowdfunding on Jamaica,
Yeah.
crowdfunding to get them to the game, and the joy and what they brought, to us as people who love the game. The other little interesting piece, or two more on the commercials, was Canada. And you think, oh, Canada's, a progressive country. What could have been going on there? But interesting enough, they too didn't get the support that their local body felt that they were entitled to, despite being the 2021 gold medal champions of the world in Olympic history, right? For that Olympic Games. And they got less, they were asked to prepare for, to be world class with less support than the men got last year.
Wow,
So,
that's great.
and they went to Parliament. They, if anyone's interested, you have a look online. But, there was some, how the media reported something that went down with one of these ministers, and the language was shocking. Like, what is this captain bitching about? Like,
Crazy.
I mean, he has since apologized and retracted and da-da-da-da, but there's still this stuff going on. And then the last little example on this commercial piece was football shirt sales, right? Big generating money, also helps the players. That Nike, for some reason, decided not to produce for sale the number one goalkeeper in the world, which happens to be the English goalkeeper, Mary Earle, her outfit, her kit for being
What?
a goalkeeper.
What was that?
And they know it's just that it's not available for sale. And so, young boys and girls who want to support that and are so keen on and can't buy it, right? Just and if they're the kind of callback on that is, oh well, sales, but she is the top. I think she's the number 3 selling shirt at Manchester United. She's the it's like it's just crazy. It's just absolutely
Doesn't make any financial sense at all, does it, for Nike? What are they up to?
So again, so lots of stuff going on, and so all of this noise around it, and even in the England team, there's an ongoing issue that hasn't been resolved around player bonuses, and so whether they will get player bonuses or not, right? And we're talking about this is the Euros champions who are now in the semi-finals, and they still don't know if they're going to get player bonuses. So they put their talks on hold because they hadn't been resolved going into the start of the World Cup. And so this will be, after hopefully, the final. But again, like the commitment of these bodies to actually give everyone the best possible chance to prepare and work and, do without the noise, without the interference. But hey, no, let's not, So it's the misalignment of agendas, I think, is what is disappointing.
So wow. So how are we going to make this good? I think you've probably got some good ideas, Corina, to help
I
help
was
it out.
sweating like anything in here.
Swimming like you're in the hot shop.
I am. I'm in the hot studio, and menopausal sweat, and there's no aircon on. Right, so I have my little fan, my little fan.
Whereas I've got the sun behind me, and I'm loving it because it's warming me up from a very cold night.
I'll send you some warmth.
Give me some sunshine with some more warmth, actually.
So I think I think it's it's really hard to know what the resolution of that is, apart from the obvious for me, which is if you love the sport, support it. Be informed. Be informed of this sort of stuff. And if social media is your thing, and you like to kind of put comments out, but buy tickets to go and see, support their shirts. Players put books out, right? Read, support, listen, doing all those sort of things, and I think the other thing is to turn the reflection into what's happening in your workplace. Right? So what are the issues that are not being resolved, that could be resolved if we had a more of a commitment to let go or get rid of the interference or the noise
Yeah.
in and around, what's going on in your workplace,
Yeah.
I don't know, does there anything pop up for you?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking like, we are performing well in our workplaces mostly, and we go in there and we're putting, the concerns we have aside. And you talked about, financial concerns. I
Mm,
mean, this is a harder time for most people at the moment, for
mm,
mortgage rates are increasing and cost of living's increasing. And, there are pressures on people, and yet we still have to walk into our workplaces and perform our best. So I think, being a workplace where you understand holistically how to support people, and providing some sense of financial support. And I don't mean paying more necessarily. I mean maybe having access to some financial support, advice and things like that. So
mm,
I think there's ways in which workplaces can support people financially. And good workplaces do this, they do provide, ability. So I think that, a good employer, and if you're a leader, ensuring that, people are financially okay.
mm,
Budgeting help is something an employer can provide as part of their well-being packages. It's not just all about, the fruit in the kitchen. It's not all about, that sort of stuff. So
yeah.
anyway, while we were talking financial stuff, I thought,
Yeah,
it's a
that's good.
reminder.
Yeah. And I think the word that comes up for me while you were talking, is the politics.
Mm,
How can you remove the politics to really focus on what people need?
yeah.
Clarity, quiet, no noise, resolution of issues,
And
those things.
take the shame away from, from these things, like,
Mm,
take away, that being vulnerable when, you have to ask for help is, really a tough thing. But,
mm,
to feel shame because you're struggling, for whatever reason, I mean, we should take some of that stuff away,
yeah. And I think the other piece is, does your team have the resources it needs for success?
yeah,
And that's, like with the Canadian example, and there's many other, other teams, around how are we setting our teams up for success? Do we have the resources available to do that? And then if we don't, how can we get creative around providing the
totally.
hygienic needs getting in there? So that's on the commercial. But the
Yes.
other big thing, the second piece I just wanted to share was around culture, right? And as you know, listening on our channel here, we love culture. We're always talking about culture and purpose. And so part of the kind of the bad work story around culture has been around players feeling, in particular squads, that they have not been heard. And
Mhm.
this has brought that drama and noise, before the World Cup and into it, and some kind of really interesting, interesting quote unquote kind of things, the captain of the Irish team tweeting a picture of a mouth with a zip across it after a game out of a fallout with the coach. We've got the Spanish team, although they had a great result today, right? So that's interesting around the what, but the
Mm,
how, the background of
mm,
that team, in September last year, 50 members of their squad, including all their best players, wanted to resign, like
mm,
resign from the national team because of the
yeah.
working conditions that they believed was not supportive of them, not, supporting them emotionally or physically, and the inability of the coach to actually listen to them and for them to be heard. And then
Wow.
it was just a huge, bureaucratic, hierarchical, the Spanish, authorities got involved, and then the coach, and it was kind of like no player will have the power to upset this kind of, chain of command. And as a result of that,
Wow.
12 players did not come to this World Cup, but
Gee.
three did, and thankfully for Spain, the depth of their squad, which is of course the resources
Mm,
and support that the country has put into women's football, allowed them to actually have exciting young new players come through.
Mm.
And so, but again, it's like, God, I'd just love to know more about what was happening in that. But I think it's very interesting because half of, like even today during the game, the commentators were talking about they found it really weird that apparently half of Spain wanted them to win and the other half didn't because of this drama
Oh, really?
being around the coach,
Yeah.
right?
So they'll be glorified if they win, and this has happened so often, doesn't it? We see this in business as well. When a team performs something well, and yet we know underneath that there's a huge human fallout. We know that there's pain and struggle, and yet the glory comes, and the end does not outweigh the means. This is about. You might get across the line, you might be the world champions, but if you're underneath completely deconstructed and suffering, then it does not outweigh, the end. So
Yeah. And one of the key players, when she was writing about this, said, "It is killing me inside not to be attending the World Cup." Right? Can you imagine that? But she said, "My values have to come first."
All right.
And that is a huge, ask. I mean, well, huge commitment, right? But there's another team that had a similar thing go down, right? A player revolt, which was the French.
Oh, really?
But
they love it. The French love to protest.
Yeah, but they dealt with it differently, which is that their captain resigned, and the reports are like incredible. It's like in 2019 they were actually the French national team were actually crying in their bedrooms during the tournament because of what was going down in the tension that was operating between the coach and the players. And so they did a players' revolt, but their federation dealt with it differently, did a whole investigation, which then resulted in that coach being asked to resign or being fired. And they brought in a more collaborative, listening, unity. We're all in this together, and we support each other to lift up each other kind of philosophy. So that's how they dealt with that. So fascinating, right?
Fascinating, yeah.
Oh God.
Such a different approach, though.
Yep, exactly. And then I was just checking the other one I want to just briefly touch on was the US of A. And their culture, and again, like this is just snippets that we get, but they had a terrible tournament. But if there's some stuff around too much focus on social media, too much focus on how many followers you have, too much focus on photo shoots, but also around how the platform, the influence of one player who brought quite an activist, standing up for women's rights and gender pay equity, and where the agenda was more about that than the football. Now, was it? Who knows? Was it just the timing of older players, etc.? So who knows? But there was a lot of noise. Again, the interference around this, that distracts from actually the football, right? Which is the love of the game and what we're here to do, and that is kind of like in huge contrast, to what we're seeing in kind of the Australian camp and the particularly the English camp, which is a lot of joy, a lot of focus, a lot of calmness. And it's just that whole. It's a very, very. It seems from the outside looking in quite a different vibe. So again, what do we take from that?
What are we going to make? How are we going to make this good? What can we do?
What do we extract? Well, I think it's again, it's like, what do we extract into our own teams and our own leadership styles? And I think the big themes out of that is, when people are upset on your team, how are you responding as a leader? Is it the autocratic,
pull yourself together, get on with it,
or is it more inclusive and exploratory and, like how do we and how do we approach tension and conflict in teams?
Yeah.
You know, and we've done a couple of things around conflict and listening
And
to each
again,
other.
conflict, and so often we see in teams that conflict's avoided
Mm.
and it's seen
Oh,
as a bad thing. Now, conflict is a normal part of life. We're bumping up against stuff all the time, but it's how we handle conflict, right? And, often in teams it becomes very personal.
mm,
Now, when it's becoming personal, then it's not dealing with the issue. It's dealing, it's taking it to a place where it's not going to be productive. And
mm.
so we need to always remember that, identifying the issue is the first step in conflict. It's not just like trying to beat someone down until someone gives in. It's really, I can't talk enough about how conflict needs to
Yeah,
be worked well.
yeah.
So yeah,
And I
yeah,
think everything again comes back to culture. Like, what is the
mm,
explicit culture in your teams that either allows people, like all of the stuff was fessing, like bubbling away, and then it's got huge and blowing up and dramatic, where,
yes,
what could have been happening around, honest dialogue, getting, talking through these tensions,
yep.
having,
Stop
as
the
you said,
drama, guys. We've got to stop the drama.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
exhausting.
It's exhausting, and it's an interference, right? It takes away
Total.
from your ability to unleash your potential and really perform. And in the sport that every single one of these players is so committed to, they love. They've dreamed of being in a World Cup all their life, and
Yes,
here they are,
yes.
and doing an amazing, amazing job. And I just feel like, wow, if given all of this stuff going down, they still are able to pull through, and such
Totally.
credit, absolute credit to every one of them. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
all I got to say really.
Yeah.
Now that
Wow. Lots of really cool stuff then. Yeah.
yeah, so again, if hopefully there's some themes that you could pull out
Yeah.
of that. If you need any help, reach out. Emma and I are here to help you. And if you're a football fan, tomorrow.
Yes. I know. Let's find out.
All right, everyone. Thanks.
Take
Bye for
care. Go
now.
well.
Bye.
Till next time. Goodbye.
Bye.